Welcome to Thoughts and Discourses on Digital Transformation. Dive into a world of insightful conversations and profound ideas. Join us as we explore the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities in the digital age.
Okay, welcome back to part 2 of Vibe Coding with Sal. And now I want to have a discussion with Sal about what spec coding is. And so back over to you, Sal. You want to explain spec coding for us? Thanks.
So spec coding is writing out the way you would, like in a planning meeting, the way you would write out what a particular feature is, write out a set of functional and non-functional requirements, and write it out in such a way, a series of individual statements, which make sense independently, that when you put it together, describes an application, right? So, you write a user story with functional, non-functional requirements, and you prompt the LLM to generate the application to those specifications. That's very different than vibe coding, which is you just kind of make it up as you go along. I actually like, in terms of when you're vibing, the thing that I found the most useful was Tina Fey wrote a nice little guide on improv comedy. Improv works better as a description of what you should be doing with your LLM than vibing. Your view is yes and this particular back and forth is what builds everything out. Building out things slowly over time, asking questions, and getting some code generated that actually kind of works the way I would like it to work. I do like improv better than vibing as a model for thinking about it.
That's great. I still think that the best way of breaking down, and if you're going to use some vibe coding or some of these tools, is still to break down the problem into a series of smaller problems and then solve each problem and use like an API to connect them all together, right? I feel like the bigger the problem, the less chance you'll be able to get some code that will be able to do all of that.
In some cases, I find that one thing that works really well as a spec is if you've ever seen Swagger, for defining a set of REST endpoints, that's a really good spec. And some tools, I think is it called Lovely? I think.
Lovable.
They're Lovable, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Lovable. It is an absolute amazing piece of work building out React applications towards, pointing towards REST endpoints. And something like that, I could see a situation where an analyst that has specific knowledge of business processes, which the engineering team may not be completely aware of,
Right.
can come up with something that they can bring to the engineering team and have them just build upon it.
Right. I see. So just to look to the future, right? So we've got context, you've talked a lot about the context engineering. We talked about different ways we can actually define our requirements. What do you think is going to happen, I'll say a year, 2 years from now with this vibe coding? Do you see this gaining steam?
So I think that there are basically two things I think are going to happen over the next year. One is that you're going to see a lot more tools that are focused on developers bifurcate from tools which are general purpose, right? The tools which are developer focused are going to have a lot of customization on the way the code is generated. That customization is going to allow you to go in and specify exactly how you're going to build your code. The general user ones, I think you're going to see a bigger focus on integration with other layers, like adding commands to connect to MCP servers, adding commands for automation and accessing REST endpoints and so on. I could see a situation where an organization can create a bundle of context engineering files to get pushed out to their analysts. So their analysts, when they're using an LLM, the LLM knows not to export PII.
Right. Or not to save secrets in your UI, right? We saw people doing that as well, right?
Oh, yeah. I could see situations where there are rules about how to access data, like forbidding your local LLM from accessing anything outside of 3 or 4 particular directories. Not accessing nothing in your email box that has been tagged with data retention rules or
Mhm.
with data loss prevention rules. You don't want your LM to catch that because it might you don't know how long that information is going to be stay in the LLM. It'd be a violation of your data retention rules. Um, I could see situations where things like automatically masking social security numbers.
Yeah, I
These
think
things could
there's
be
an
outlined
awful
out.
lot of work to be done on security, right? I think
Oh yeah,
security is just starting to catch up. Things like, confidential data, PII, security.
even in the CI/CD pipelines, you often have things like making sure that you're masking your logged information, so you're not going to dump out PII into your log files. Um, there's no reason why something like that shouldn't be included in your LM to make sure that you're always masking things. If you're creating an Excel file from, you're asking it to go and query two different data sources and then check with the REST endpoint and generate an Excel file, it could do that for you, but make sure it masks social security numbers. Um, make sure it anonymizes user information. Um, having those things in there and having the LLM prompt you. I think you're going to see situations where people have CI/CD pipelines for testing their context files. Like, does it generate code that violates your coding standard? Um, if I give it a prompt, like I'm going to give it a prompt every couple hours, does it ever manipulate the file system without using Git commands? I could see people doing that to make sure that they're providing the best. Um, and I think eventually you'll have a synthesis from now where people define what exactly you can do and can't do with these tools. Again, these are not deterministic. These are probabilistic tools, not deterministic tools. That's not something you use. Everything was like, no matter how many times you typed in make all, you got the exact same executable, byte by
Right.
byte, identical, same MD5 hashes. That's not the case with LLM code generation. What you get with the prompt, what you get the prompt 30 seconds later is going to be different.
Yeah, that's the thing that took me a while to wrap my head around. I'd give it the exact same prompt to build an application, and it would build it, every different way, right?
So, I mean, the goal is to improve the software development process, right? That's what we all want to do. And we know that there are things that we can improve, um, and uh, and those usually involve like implementing standards, implementing best practices, checking your code, um, having people, do code reviews. We know these things work. There are lots
Right.
of things that we know work. I think that as we move forward, we recognize what LLMs can do for the software development process. I think we'll implement um, systems for improving the quality of what we get out of our LLMs. And then as we're doing that, we'll again provide, engage in engineering discipline by checking things, inspecting things, and comparing things, and having reviews, having discussions, drinking a lot of coffee, complaining on blogs when things don't work. And then we'll get to a point where it's better. As far as LLMs for business users, I think that there's just so much money to be made there um, that it's just going to happen without us. Like, it's just going to right over us. Eventually, like you're going to see business users being able to do a lot of stuff that they needed to lean on engineers for themselves, not
Right.
production ready, but I look forward to the day in which a discussion about functionality involves looking at demos that the analysts put together. Like the department manager is going to say, "Hey, three of my guys put together this thing, and uh, they looked at this and says this is what they want the process to look like."
Well, I think
Um,
that's where doing, creating some of the UIs first and showing people what they're going to get. Now we're getting to the point where vibe coding you basically give it to an analyst. You can actually build up, I would say, a proof of concept, that actually people can click on. You can actually see data. It kind of sort of works, right? It wouldn't work in production because it wouldn't be able to handle the performance or the availability, some of the non-functional requirements, but that's where we get much higher grade requirements, right? If you have something that somebody says, hey, this works pretty much like what I want, then you've got, 60, 70% of the requirements already done. So I think the more that
Yeah.
we can get more accurate requirements and more detailed requirements into the hands of the developers, the better end product it's going to be. And I think this just jumps to that level, right? So
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Sal. Great seeing you again.
Okay. Thank you, Colin. This is great.